Welcome to week 145 of Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara.
Hello.
We watched episode 704 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Monday, May 4th, 1987. And we usually watch Bionic Woman on Wednesdays. And we saw Marge Doucet in an exciting wrestling episode as a Russian spy. Victoria suggests putting their baby's money in a trust for their next Capwell heir. Mason says if it was the money he was interested in, he would have accepted Cece's offer of money to marry her in the first place. This is not some news that Victoria was too happy with. She ends up kicking Mason out during this argument. Cece shows up at some point looking for Mason, and then tries to leave, but Victoria drags him in and says that she thinks Mason married her just for the baby's inheritance. And Cece says that he had accused Mason of the same thing, but that he denied it. And at first seems to be defending Mason, saying, pretty sure he's not in it for the money, but then he does end up saying, although, maybe he is. So that doesn't really reassure Victoria. She reveals to Cece that it is in fact a boy, because he's saying, it's just 50-50 chance now. No, it's 100% chance. Then, back home with Sophia, goes, that Victoria's as bad as Mason. I don't know if her baby should get my father's inheritance since he's not a true Capwell. So now he is trying to figure out a way to weasel out of his promise to give male baby Lane the bulk of the Capwell fortune. Now that, Eden's dead, obviously. And then he starts talking about, what if, maybe Cruz should know that's his baby, don't you think? And Sophia's like, don't you dare tell Cruz or anyone that baby is really Cruz's. And Cece also points out that he got wind through his connections that there is no partnership up for purchase at Mason's law firm, and that he took that $2 million for some other nefarious purposes. Sophia says, why do you always think the worst of Mason? And he says, every time I'm about to assume the worst of Mason, he doesn't disappoint me. That was, I guess I thought it was going to, Mason was going to reveal to Cece, I used your money to buy the Dr. Nicholas's secret formula. But I guess Cece's, ahead of the game on this one. So I don't know if he'll demand the $2 million back from Mason, or maybe in the next episode this will all move ahead and Mason will have bought the formula out from under him. Kane burns the newspaper without letting Eden see it, but then reveals that the details of the story were that the Capwells all think she's dead because the plane that she was piloting exploded. And Eden finds that odd because she says, I never made it to the airport, but she can't quite remember why. And she wonders if her purse was with her when Kane found her, and he says, no, it was not. So
this confirms that she actually has had a little bit of amnesia, because we were wondering last time we had our discussion about why she hadn't remembered the lady who attacked her.
She does have a nightmare at the end of the episode and wakes up having seen the mystery woman briefly. I don't think she remembers being, hit with the gun, or that she even had the gun yet or anything yet. So she's probably got months to remember that before she finally gets out of that place. Cece finds out that Eden drew up a surprise will. That's interesting. Don't know what could possibly be in that will that could twist anything. Presumably, her money's going to Cruz, unless she puts something in there about Victoria's baby. That's the only...
that would be interesting.
I don't know why there's a bubble with a thumbs down on the screen. I can't imagine what else it could be. But, when there's a will in a soap opera, there's always got to be some surprise. So looking forward to seeing what that could be. Pearl tells Julia that Cruz is up on the roof right now, trying to rescue Lucy. And Julia says he's not stable enough to do that, and they race up. We see a reprise of Cruz reaching forward and slipping off the ledge, and we now get a new angle of the ledge from below. So it's about almost half a story or to a story below it. We're shooting up at them, and Cruz falls completely off the ledge and grabs onto the edge. So we see now the ledge is actually kind of like a weird corner, but a concave corner of the building. So Lucy's on that ledge, and Cruz was on this ledge, but now he's hanging here. So Lucy has to pull him up and save his life. And I guess during that whole ordeal, she gets talked into the idea that her life is also worth something. So they end up coming back onto the roof safely, and Haley grabs Lucy and hugs her. Julia asks Cruz if he fell on purpose, and he doesn't really give a response that lets us figure out whether he actually might have been crazy enough to do that. He's still kind of drunk, so although he was driving last time we saw him.
But hopefully this is a redemptive moment for both Cruz and Lucy. Maybe this will be a bit of a turning point.
Now there's a bunch of reporters up on the roof by this point, and guess who one of them is? It's Miss Norris, our mystery woman. She has a camera, and she calls out Inspector Castillo and takes his photo. Lucy moves into the guest house with Haley, presumably just for a short time, but maybe this will be a longer-term thing. And then Ted is worried that Haley's trauma might have been just as bad as Lucy's, since they had gone through the same thing. And Cece tells Ted he's happy that therapy is working for him. Once again, Cece does one of these 180s that he often does, but then you always never know what his true feelings are, like with, let's give all this money to Cruz and Victoria's baby.
Yeah, CC, for all his bluster and sort of very masculine tone, is also very manipulative, actually, in some ways.
Yeah, he is. And we saw that from the very beginning with Joe Perkins. Cece says to Ted, I love my children very much. We've all suffered with the loss of Eden. I think of all of the things I never said. All I want is the best for you and all of us. Well, I believe that is to be truthful. Cruz puts a for sale sign on the beach house. Keith shows up, makes a crack about how much is he asking, and tells him that Mr. Phillips has dropped the charges now, having heard the whole tale, I guess. And he wants Cruz back on the police force. And Cruz tells him to get lost. So I'm actually wondering, does Cruz go back to the police force after a period of lolling around? Or is he going to have yet another job after firefighter, policeman, and secret agent? Cruz lies down on the beach, and Miss Norris watches from the bushes. A drunk Mason finds Cruz and is about to tell him that Victoria's baby is his, but somehow during the commercial break thinks the better of it and says, oh, the reason I wanted to talk to you is because if our baby's a girl, can we name it Eden? Now, of course, he already knows it's a boy, so clearly he's just pulled that out. So he's sobered up just enough to realize that maybe he doesn't want that to happen. But I was actually kind of tricked by the writer here. I thought he was just going to blurt it out. But I guess there can be time. We've got months and months before Eden comes back. Cruz says that's fine, which is interesting because previously he said do whatever you want, leave me out of it for everything else. So it's interesting that he's on board with that. Victoria locks Mason out of his apartment and he ends up sleeping in the hallway. But back on the beach, Miss Norris watches Cruz sleep up against his log or whatever, And she starts walking around and it's saying, cruise. I feel like she's obsessed with cruise.
Yeah, I mean, people do seem to be.
Well, those are all our stories for today. Nice to see Miss Norris again. That was a Monday. I think we'll see her next on Friday. And guess what happens tomorrow? The first exciting day of the Iran-Contra hearings. And Santa Barbara will be preempted, so we'll only have 4 episodes this week. We might get done by Saturday after all. Since we're recording this on Wednesday, I'm going to race through the rest of the week. But I had a bit of an injury over the weekend. Rode my annual rollerblading around Stanley Park. Saw one of my rollerblades decide that 32 years was long enough to hold together, and it just shattered, and I took a bit of a spill, and I've been recovering from that. So, the funny thing is, the same thing happened to my ski boots years ago. So now all of my sport-related footwear has fallen into a million pieces. So we'll be back after we watch the Wednesday episode, the Wednesday, May 6th episode of Santa Barbara, episode 705. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Stop trying to defend him. I'm not crazy. I'm not mistaken. That's what Mason's done. Probably using the borrowed money for some underhanded reason.
Why do you enjoy always assuming the worst of Mason?
You can only judge someone on past performance, can't you? And every time I am about to assume the worst in Mason, he doesn't disappoint me.
It's Tuesday, May the 5th, 1987, and the Iran-Contra hearings have started, so Santa Barbara has been preempted today. So after recording tomorrow's episode, we wandered back out of Stanley Park and decided to come to the Rose Garden to do a little special episode, just to fill you in on the trip that we took. Now, as you may recall, if you saw last week's release, we were going to Greece, and we got as far as Montreal, and our plane was delayed leaving Montreal due to mechanical difficulties, and so having been through that already once in Hawaii and not getting any dinner because in the end they said, the catering had to be removed after 90 minutes because we're not allowed to serve you food that's that old. We ended up having dinner at the airport in Montreal and then heading back to the not terminal, what's it called? The gate. Now, the gates in Montreal we were at were in a weird little thing that were actually well, we had several different gates. Our first gate was through the really smelly perfume section of the duty-free, and we had to go all the way to the last gate. But when we got there, we found that they had already moved our gate back to the other side of the perfume. So we trekked back over there, and there were 3 or 4 little gates that they had made a little, sectioned off area. And I realized it was because people would already have been through security and more importantly, the duty-free part. So we were behind some weird glass that was separating us from the non-international section. And then they delayed us again because they were still working on the mechanical things. And then suddenly they said, everyone has to get out of the way. The flight to Rio that was about to leave from this gate has been canceled, and everyone's getting off the plane, and they have to come through here, and we have to make sure that they end up, going through customs properly. So we waited for that, and I said to Diane, I bet our plane's actually not leaving, but they don't want to tell us until they've cleared all the Rio people out of the gate. And sure enough, as soon as the last Rio person was gone, they said, and by the way, you're not going to Athens. You'll get a text in the next 30 minutes with info on your rerouting and your hotel for the night, because it was probably about midnight at this point.
This was for a layover that was only supposed to be an hour or so. So we had been at the airport almost all day at that point.
So we had to come back through customs, and then we just found a place to sit after customs without leaving the airport, just to wait for our texts. And took the opportunity to phone the insurance company to see what our options were, and the midnight shift answered immediately and said, well, gave us all the things. And I said, well, I see something in our insurance about if we just choose to cancel the rest of our trip. That seemed to be related to cruises, but I said, well, we're going on a tour, so presumably this counts. He thought that it did, but he said we would have to talk to the daytime people for that sort of a cancellation. So we waited for our email, and then we got a text from Air Canada saying our new flight was going to leave at 1 the next day and go to Newark, and then we'd wait there for 12 hours, and sometime after midnight head to Athens. Now, our tour from Athens, was literally, starting 2 hours after we were supposed to have originally gotten there. So we realized that our tour group will have left Athens already by the time we get there, and we won't have a hotel in Athens to stay at. So we thought, well, we'll probably choose the option of canceling if they confirm in the morning. That's the option that we have. So then we waited for the second text, which was the hotel information, and it never came. So at one point we thought, well, let's try and find an open terminal before the airport closes. And so we went upstairs to the departures area, to the Air Canada section, and there were a couple of hundred people in line, many of whom we recognized from our flight.
And some from the other canceled flights that day too.
So we realized that we probably weren't going to get that text or email. So we got in line, and it was 2 a.m. before we got to the front of the line. But because we were the last in line, they had already given away all of the cheap hotel rooms near the airport. And so we got a beautiful room in the Fairmont Queen Elizabeth Hotel in downtown Montreal, which I looked up, and I think it was worth $777 on the website. So
5-star hotel on
Yep.
Air Canada's dime.
So we thought, well, might as well enjoy that, and especially since our flight didn't leave till 1, we had plenty of time in the morning to decide if we were going to go to Athens somehow. But I think we already figured that logistically that wasn't going to work. So anyway, 9 a.m. when they opened, we called back the insurance company, and they confirmed we could just cancel everything. They'd reimburse all the flights we hadn't taken yet, which seems a bit annoying because obviously we didn't want to be in Montreal, so why should we pay to be in Montreal? So that's a little bit of an annoyance. But they wouldn't reimburse us the flight from Athens back home. So that was another annoying thing. So we decided, and then we said, is it okay if we stay a few days in Montreal? That wouldn't affect our insurance claim. And they said, no, that's fine. So we decided we would just stay there for 6 days instead of going to Athens for 7 days. And so we scrambled to try and figure out what there is to do in Montreal. Well, guess what? There was a jazz festival starting. So you will have remembered that from last week, the jazz festival in the background. So that was one thing. And we trekked out to that street and didn't really hang out and watch any because it was super hot and nothing.
Heat dome.
And of course, there's different types of jazz, and sometimes it's just not the jazz you like. So, but we did walk along that street and
St. Catharines.
had some crepes.
We had a lot of crepes in Montreal. Very
Yeah.
good food. We actually had very good food.
Mm-hmm. So I logged into the Air Canada app and said cancel the remaining flight, and it said they were refunding us some money. So I haven't checked the credit card yet to see if we actually did get refunded something, but we had the cheapest non-refundable tickets. So if they do refund us, then I won't have to make as big of a claim from the insurance. So what else did we do? We did a bunch of museums while we were there.
Yeah, we did 3 museums: the Museum of Archaeology, the Museum of Fine Arts, and the McCord Stewart Museum, which is, I think, affiliated with McGill University.
Museum of Archaeology was having a Greek exhibit, so we got up to speed on our Greek lore, even though we didn't actually make it to Greece.
And the Museum of Fine Arts was having a Roman exhibit, so we got to see what we didn't see in Italy last year.
And the McCord Stewart, is that what it's called?
I think that's what it's called. Something like that.
They had something that appealed to us was the 1976 Olympics exhibit that they had.
It was a really wonderful exhibit, very extensive.
Mm-hmm.
See all sorts of things. So
at the end, I was very excited to see a bunch of menus from the time. I don't know if that was part of it, or it was a separate thing, but it was overlapping timelines. Now, in between, we had gone to the Expo 67 site, which I was excited about because I was born in 1967, and we had a very nice trip to the Expo site in New York, the World's Fair site there. So I thought it would be similar to that. When we were in Chicago, we went to the museum that has a bunch of stuff from the 93 Expo. Well, there's nothing there. Not only is there nothing there, they don't care to publicize it in any way. The dome that was built for Expo is still there. It's being used as a museum. It was $35 to see the museum, but there were 5 museums, and they were each $35, but you could get a family pass for $155, and we're like, do we really need to spend $155 to see an insectarium? So we ended up not going to any of the museums. And we did try to find another tower that was on the property on this map, and it was a nightmare to find because this map had these fiddly little hair-like lines, which were trails. And so we followed the trail. Of course, whenever you use a trail map, the curving and twisting, you always lose track of where you are. And there were no signs on these trails, and we kept coming to like 2 and 3 fork junctions. And, we had no idea if we were anywhere near. Luckily, we came across some tourists who had a GPS. And they said, oh yeah, you have to turn right at this fork, which was good. And then the next fork, luckily Diane could see the tower from it. But yeah, very poor that trail. I mean, every fork should have a sign saying, go back here or go this way. And then afterwards we were going to eat because we had seen some utensils on signs as we were, leaving the main area. And not that well directed either to get to the utensils. We found a guy who had a little cart with an umbrella and was selling Coke, and we said, oh, is there a restaurant here? And he pointed to himself. So I said, I think there was more. I don't think those utensil signs were necessarily for you. So anyway, we wandered around and eventually found the bistro. But we were greeted with very, 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 very overdone fries sitting there in a deep fryer. That was the first thing we saw. So that kind of immediately put us off all the hot food they had. And had a very terrible coffee drink there that was in a can. So, but we did that, and then the second part of our trip out to that site was we wanted to see the Habitat 67 apartments, I guess. And so we had to take a bus to get there, and we had a very specific bus we were supposed to take, and there was a bus with the right number and all the right markings on it, and we got on it, and it went to the casino, and then it came right back to the Expo site. So we said to the guy, hey, is this ever going to go to the Habitat? He goes, oh, you have to go on that other bus. And it was another 777 bus with the exact same markings and terminus listed on it. So, and the lady really did not want us. She was very annoyed that we were running for her bus, and she pulled away the instant I got in, and I ended up cutting my arm quite badly on the razor sharp sandpaper 50-year-old upholstery on that bus. So I was not too happy with the Montreal bus system at that point.
And all to see a shot out old apartment building by the side of the highway.
Yes, with a no trespassing sign on the lawn. So we got a photo from the street and got back on the next bus.
So that was a bit disappointing, but everything else we did in Montreal was really quite wonderful. We went to the old section of Montreal, which dates back to the 1600s, and that's a really wonderful place to visit. We saw a show called Aura at Notre Dame Cathedral, which was amazing. We went to St. Joseph's Oratory on top of Mont Royal, and that was just a really beautiful experience. And we toured some of the kind of funky little neighborhoods in Montreal, including the St. Denis district. We visited the St. Denis district, which I believe is the Latin Quarter, or near the Latin Quarter of Montreal, which was quite wonderful. And we had some absolutely amazing bagels. So they have a very old Jewish community in Montreal, so you can get some really wonderful food there as well.
On the first day we ate at some place called Deli Planet, which is also a comedy club. It was lunchtime though, so there was no comedy. We found out that the second hotel that we moved to, after our one night in an expensive room for free, the Hotel Bonaventure, which is in the Place Bonaventure, I think. Very odd experience, very unexpected hotel. First of all, you get in and the first thing you see is an elevator that takes you to the 10th floor, which is where the reception is. And for several days we wondered what's in between floor 1 and 10, because when you get to 10, there's really only a one-story hotel. There's like a half flight up and a half flight down to like 9.5 and 10.5 floor, and that's it. So, you know, we did see an escalator down to the convention space, and when we went down that, there was just one floor. So the 9th floor is this big convention space. So, mystery stuff happening in those other missing 8 floors, I guess.
Well, one thing Montreal is known for, unfortunately, is building boondoggles, and we sort of wondered if this hotel might be a sign of that. Definitely, if you go to somewhere like, well, I guess the most famous examples are the Olympic Stadium, whose roof famously didn't work, and I think they've just finished paying off for that. And Mirabel Airport, which was built outside the city with no public transit, and I believe that it no longer caters to passengers. I think it's just an airport for freight now. But there's a lot of, yeah, that's one of the things Montreal unfortunately is known for, is very odd, very expensive building projects.
We did eventually find that we could actually go underground from our hotel to the metro, and in fact to our previous hotel, which had a really nice little cafe in it that we constantly went back to for breakfast every day. So, and then on the last day, when we found that bagel place, it was across the other street, and we realized there's probably a way to get there too, and we found the secret tunnel to the other side of the street. So, you know, because it was extremely hot there. And although the one day there was a surprise flash flood, we were downtown heading back home to the hotel, and suddenly the skies opened up and we had to hide under an overhang to avoid getting soaked, and didn't really realize it, but we were only a block away from the Queen Elizabeth Hotel, after which we could get into the tunnels and get to our own hotel. But when it kind of let up, we started running towards, you know, the right way, and even that one block we got soaked because it started raining again, and the water was just flowing through the streets. So, anything else?
I don't think so. We made our flight home, no problem. It was very, very smooth. So,
yeah,
that was it for our trip, basically.
We did use public transportation everywhere, other than the cab ride to the hotel on the first night, paid for by Air Canada. So we took the metro/bus back to the airport on the you know, way back. Although we didn't have a seat. Oh, we eventually got one, but at first we didn't have one. So
we found the people in Montreal very very friendly and helpful. Of course, they do speak French there predominantly. So as long as you make a little bit of an effort to use the language, they seem to be quite amenable.
I think I remembered enough. Of course, on the first day I said gracias, which I saw someone else doing too. So, But by the end of it, I was kind of remembering my high school French a bit more. So in conclusion, travel insurance was a good idea. Metro worked pretty well, and a lot of good food in Montreal. There were fireworks too, but we were too tired to see. All right, we'll see you tomorrow for the Wednesday episode of Santa Barbara.
Bye-bye.
From the mini golf in Stanley Park, Misha and Dianne are watching Santa Barbara. Well, we've got our own DJ, so we're gonna try and find a spot that's a little further away. Welcome to episode 705 of Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara. We finished episode 705, which originally aired Wednesday, May the 6th, 1987. Cece tries to find out what's in Eden's will, and he accuses both Mason and Julia of lying when they say they don't know anything about it. Now, Cece's lawyer, George, tries to get Cruz to come to the will reading tonight, saying it's kind of mandatory that he be there. But Cruz tells George and Julia that he's leaving town and just lets Cece handle whatever he thinks is best with respect to Eden's will. Now, this reminds me of that time Cruz was trying to leave town to go to his wedding with Eden, and he ended up stuck in Baja California. Victoria accuses Mason of having had multiple affairs, all that time pretending to visit Julia while secretly sneaking out to meet his real girlfriends. She's completely oblivious to the fact that he was meeting Julia all those times.
She's made up an entire alternate universe.
She talks about getting a divorce. She says, oh, did you and Cece work out what would happen if we got divorced? Julia comes looking for Mason to discuss the will, and Victoria thinks it's about Cece's will and not Eden's. And there's a bit of a confusion there. She says, what else has Mason told you about my baby? But luckily, she doesn't spill the beans about who the father is to Julia, because Julia tells Victoria that Mason is not the kind of person who would discuss Victoria's private matters with another person. Later, at the law offices, Julia's baby kicks, and Mason is there to witness it, and he ends the episode with his hand on Julia's belly. Lucy gets a phone call. She's, of course, living with Haley and Ted, with Haley at the guest house, and she freaks out when she hears the voice on the other end. Then she tells Haley and Ted not to worry about her. They should go to their classes and stop babysitting her. So she specifically mentions that Haley has a class today, Ted has a class today, and Ted has work today. Now, I can't remember where Ted works. Do you remember?
Well, the last time we saw him, wasn't he at the stables?
Is he still at the stables?
I don't know. I mean, he was at a radio station for quite a while, too.
No, but he definitely quit that. So, okay, I guess he is working for Mr. Abernathy then. And he's definitely still got classes. A man visits Sharon, ostensibly to get information about helping his niece, but he overhears a call telling her that Lucy is staying in the guest house at 300 Park Lane in Montecito, and he writes down the address. Later, Lucy sees the man at the crisis center and starts to scream. Ted calls Cruz, and Lucy says that she saw the man who assaulted her. She reveals she's been lying to everyone when she said she never knew the man, and that it was actually her college professor, and he was sentenced to 2 years in prison last year. And she asks Cruz, how could he be out now? So this might be a retcon of her storyline. Maybe that's why they had to do a recast, because they extended the story with these new ideas, and the original actress may not have been available for a longer period. So interestingly, later she's at the guest house alone, and she hears a voice of the man echoing through the house, saying he's going to kill her. She goes over to Cruz's and says he's the only one that can help her. Now, interestingly, Sharon tells Haley, Ted, and Cruz, I believe, that originally Lucy used to have hallucinations about the man who assaulted her, but she believes that what she's seeing now is real. So what I am wondering is if it's a combination, because the original time that Lucy got the phone call, the guy hadn't visited Sharon yet and didn't know that she was at a guest house, so would he know the guest house phone number? And they almost immediately got a call from Sharon after that. So maybe it's a weird combination of both. This was a fun one. Mason meets with Dr. Nicholas to finalize the sale of the formula. Dr. Nicholas now, he starts to put his plan in motion. He says to Mason, who in the Capwell house might have intercepted Pamela's letters? So this prompts Mason to go to the mansion, and he tries to get the key to Cece's safe from Maria, or Cece's desk from Maria, but Maria says Cece's the only one who has the key, even when they check with Rosa. But Mason overhears Maria mentioning that someone was burning something in the study and we better air it out. So immediately Mason realizes that Cece probably burned Pamela's letters, so he actually breaks into the desk, and in the very bottom drawer he finds a file folder with a bunch of little manila folders inside it with different years on them, going back to 1962 or something, I think. And there are letters from Pamela in every folder except the one from 1986. And Mason immediately comes to the conclusion that Cece has burned all of Pamela's letters to him from last year. This prompts Mason to go to the Orient Express, where Jeffrey had earlier looked very snidely at him when he spotted him having lunch with Dr. Nicholas. And he tells Jeffrey and Dr. Nicholas what he has discovered, and that he's certain that Cece burned all the letters. And Alex, I think, says, that's exactly what I assumed had happened. And Jeffrey immediately makes up with Mason and agrees when Mason says, let's work together to destroy Cece Capwell financially. And Alex says something like, it's taken you long enough or something. So Alex is in. Jeffrey says he has no money to put in, but Mason says, oh, you have something else to contribute. Jeffrey's very annoyed. He's spent all this time working for Cece. So it's so great that Jeffrey immediately buys into it.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting because earlier in the episode, Kelly was just being very businesslike with Jeffrey. She was so upset with him over what happened last time that she's just being totally businesslike and, basically cut off all personal relations with him. But Jeffrey goes to her and says, good news! Mason and I have made up.
And have an alliance.
Does not tell her that it's against Cece. And Kelly is so happy to have her Jeffrey back. So I feel like this may throw a little monkey wrench into their relationship at some point when it comes out. But right now, no one is letting on anything. So, and that's it for this episode. And the next episode, which aired on a Thursday, is episode 706. I think we decided that we are going to record a little podcast on what happened on our vacation, and we'll throw that into the slot that yesterday's Tuesday episode would have aired, which, of course, was preempted for the Iran-Contra hearings. And I think our Friday cliffhangers are going to get messed up again because of that, but the number of preemptions in the week is actually going to increase as the hearings increase. So I think cliffhanger-wise, it's just going to be a free-for-all for the next few months. All right, we will go somewhere to record the summary of our trip, which you'll have already seen, and then we'll be back after we watch episode 706. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We accidentally watched episode 707 before episode 706, mainly because Cece was wearing that same yellow sweater, and I thought, oh, that's the one we saw yesterday, and I jumped ahead. And you wouldn't have known it because we recorded episode 707 of this podcast without realizing we'd skipped an episode. We just assumed the will reading was still going to happen, and the stuff that happens with William Addison, I think his name is. Just, seemed reasonable. So we're actually recording these out of order because we watched them out of order. But we watched episode 706 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Thursday, May 7th, 1987. And on Sundays we watched The Hardy Boys. And there was a two-parter that took place on the beach. And the beach looked very familiar. Same beach that Dylan Hartley washed ashore, and where Mary and Mason went horseback riding, and where Ted and Haley went jogging. So that was our one sighting. And then every Monday, we're recording this on Monday, July 27th, and we've been watching Family every Monday for the last quite a few months, and we are now on the third last episode, which was very Audrey heavy. And while I was sitting here waiting for Diane, I thought, that Audrey kind of has a similar look to the new actress playing Lucy Pickett. And I looked it up, and Louise Foley, who played Audrey Pfeiffer on Family, is in fact Wish Foley, who is playing our new Lucy Pickett. So that's kind of funny. We've actually been seeing new Lucy for months and months on Family. So let's get to the summary. The other bonus we have is my Open Office Calc has been crashing every day this week, quite intermittently. I don't know if it's a Windows update that's wrecked it, but I have to constantly save in order not to lose everything. So hopefully we can get through this without a crash. Julia tells Mason to get his hand off her stomach and to go home to his wife. Long story short. But it seems clear from their conversation that they both mean a lot more to each other than, unfortunately, circumstances allow them to act on. Jeffrey decides he doesn't want to take part in the plan against Cece after all, because, same reason, he was trying not to progress his feud with Mason. It would hurt Kelly. Mason, though, says it will help her to find out what her father really is like. So I don't know if Jeffrey's necessarily buying that. So I think Jeffrey's going to try to keep backing out of this a bit. Miss Norris tells the bellboy at her hotel that her first name is Athena. Now, I don't know if that's real. But when the bellboy leaves, she says, "The goddess of war," and pulls up a family photo of the Capwells and tears off the edge, which is where Eden is, and crumples up Eden's photo. So I feel like she maybe has a vendetta against all the Capwells, not just Eden, since she's got this photo, and, she might be tearing off Kelly next. I don't know.
No, this was actually good timing for us because we just saw the Odyssey, and everywhere you look, everything you read is about the Odyssey. And of course, Athena plays a big role in that story.
So yeah, looking forward to Miss Norris taking more of an interactive role with the characters on the show to find out exactly what her intentions are for the Capwell family. Lucy tells Cruz that William Addison was her professor at the campus in Ventura, and that she was his teaching assistant, and that one night he just said she was just trying to get ahead, and he got really drunk and attacked her. Cruz calls the Ventura Police Department and gets sent a dossier of William Addison along with a photo. And he tells Lucy to go to the Capwell house to stay with Haley. At the Capwell guest house, Lucy sees William Addison peering through the window at her. And she screams, and when Haley gets out of the bathroom, he has vanished. And of course, one wondered if this was a hallucination or real. But we flash to William Addison's hotel room, where a bellboy is just delivering his dinner. And he tells him to leave it outside. But when we see the inside of the hotel room, we see he's rigged up a tape recorder to respond to the knock on the door and has on a repeating loop, "Just leave it outside, thank you." So we realize not only is he real, but he has set up this alibi for himself purposely so he can threaten Lucy again.
Shades of Marcello, actually, with his devious use of various mechanical tools.
Cruz, of course, ends up investigating this and shows up, and the bellboy says, yeah, he was here at 5:20. That's when I delivered the food. And Cruz says, hey, why didn't you answer the door when the bellboy came? And William Addison says, well, I was on the phone with my wife. Now, I think when you're in a hotel, all your phone calls are recorded, especially in the 80s when even local calls were charged by the hotel. I don't know if that's as common nowadays. So Cruz asked to see all the paperwork from the hotel, and presumably he could get, the phone records to show that he wasn't even on the phone. Then he shows William Addison the arrest photo that he got from the Ventura police, and says, oh, big deal, so they know who I am. And Cruz wonders, well, why are you going under the name Wallace Arnold? And he just says, well, he's trying to lay low, but he's got an interview with the University of Santa Barbara later today, and they know all about his conviction. So I don't know if this thing will quite hold together with Cruz Castillo on the case. Ted comes to the guest house looking for Cruz to invite him to the will reading and the family dinner afterwards, but of course he's too late. Kelly calls Cruz's place to invite him to the will reading, but he's not home, and the answering machine gets it. Who is home? Miss Norris! She is wandering around the beach house, looking at stuff, picking things up, looking at the photo of Cruz and Eden. She covers up Eden's face, starts stroking Cruz's face. So even though she may be picking off the Capwells one at a time, I think maybe she's taking a shine to Cruz. We'll see if she... I think it's too soon for Cruz to be dating. Although at one point I thought maybe Lucy and Cruz could end up together at some point. If we didn't know Eden was alive, of course. Cece is angry when Mason brings Jeffrey to the will reading and insists that he come to the family dinner afterwards. Cece doesn't want Jeffrey there at all, but Sophia says, of course, he's family. He should be here. So that's another thing to drive a wedge between Cece and Sophia, I think. I think at some point something's going to snap between them. She's letting him off on a lot of stuff, but, even the happy couples on soaps have to get split apart and brought back together. So I feel like this Mason thing actually may end up being potentially the next thing that breaks them up.
Well, I mean, they were historically never a completely simpatico couple, so it wouldn't be surprising if they had a bit of turbulence in their relationship.
Cruz shows up to tell the Capwells that he's leaving town. And since he's there anyway, and everyone's in the study for the will reading,
they yank him into a
Pete
will reading.
Pete just says, hey, I just need to tell you, Eden left you everything. Stocks, bonds, money, land, which Cece's a little bit annoyed at, I think. Probably some of that stock has voting shares associated with it. Presumably, Cece thought he was going to get control over all that, so he could continue, running various things. I don't know if it's shares in the Capwell Corporation only or other things. Maybe some Armonti, who knows? So anyway, Cruz is a little annoyed by it.
I also thought it was conceivable that, sometimes people will sign over, various bits of property or assets to family members for tax reasons. So it occurred to me that some of this was actually, CC's, but it was officially under Eden's name.
Yeah, that could be. You know how Cece liked to control all of Stockman DeMott's things before he even had any romantic interest in Gina. He said, oh, I'll just handle all that and I'll put all this in my name, why not? So yeah, he says he's leaving town and, he may be back someday. He says, I've neglected my actual family, so I wonder if we'll be seeing Carmen again. And of course, he has a dad out there we've never seen. And do we know if he has any siblings?
I don't know. I don't think he's really mentioned them. But...
Unlike the Andrades, who have two other sisters that we've never seen, I think they've kept a little bit coy about how many Castillos they are, which makes sense because when you have a soap, you always want to be able to introduce another family member that has maybe some attributes that you want to introduce into a storyline. Now, Cruz says, Cece should just deal with all this stuff that Eden's given me. But Sophia pulls him aside and says, no, Eden wouldn't want that. She would want you to be the one to deal with it, And it wasn't said this time, but in the last episode, Cruz had said, but when she wrote this, she was expecting us to be in our 80s when this happened, not, a couple months later. So... But I think Sophia talks him into that. So I don't know if he will leave town after all, or he'll leave town and then call in his votes at the Capwell shareholder meetings. We'll see how this actually pans out for Cruz. Kane helps Eden take a bath and gets her to do more physiotherapy. And then he tells her that his legs were equally badly damaged in Phnom Penh, which is in Cambodia, right? So I don't know if there was actually a war in Cambodia. Legally.
know there was like a genocide and stuff in the late 70s.
So why would Kane be there?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know why he would be there. Maybe we will learn that he was some kind of undercover operative or something. He doesn't strike me as the type, but maybe there was some espionage or something he was involved with. But
yeah, I think we'll see. I bet we see some flashbacks of Kane in camo gear at some point.
Yeah, I'm sure.
He says that after the injury, he was basically unconscious and on morphine in a hospital for a year, and then bedridden or in a wheelchair for another year. So, that was... I had assumed, because I hadn't remembered this bit, that, maybe he had other, comrades in his platoon that had happened to. I didn't realize it had happened to him. So, but Eden doesn't think she's quite as strong as he was, and she says that she probably won't recover the way that he did. The chances are probably low. So she's kind of giving up a bit of hope on things, but he tries to push her. I think he's going to keep pushing her and get her better. So I think they may have formed a good friendship here. I still have in the back of my head that he's thinking she's going to end up as his wife someday. So,
yeah, and I'm assuming, these flashbacks or whatever, this discussion of his previous experience. I'm assuming maybe he was in the jungle somewhere. We assumed Vietnam, Cambodia, maybe Thailand.
Eden has another dream, remembers the mystery woman, and wakes up and says, I remember there was a woman, she tried to kill me. So she is regaining this lost memory of her final hours before her accident. So that will likely progress slowly but surely. She, of course, wants to now contact someone in Santa Barbara saying this woman is crazy. Obviously, she might try to kill other people. So I think she's going to push again for Kane to, at least go and use the phone and try to tell someone about this mystery woman. So I'll see what Miss Norris gets up to in Santa Barbara before the warning can come through. And that is it for this Thursday episode. And we will be back with episode 707, which we recorded on location.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, I'll have to cut that in. Cut that in. Welcome to episode 707 of Misha Dianne Watch Santa Barbara, which originally aired Friday, May the 8th, 1987. Well, we were planning to do a podcast from Ladner, but we decided it was really chilly, and so on the way back home we thought, well, we've never been to Oak Ridge since they refurbished it, so we've come to Oak Ridge Mall to check out the new thing, and we got about 7 minutes before they open the food court, so we thought we would do some podcasting from here, and we're just going to wing it to see what we remember about the episode we watched this morning. So Lucy is now with Cruz in the beach house, and she gets a phone call there from her attacker, and we actually see, what's his name, William Addison, on the other end of the phone. So we know that this is not a hallucination. The viewer knows for sure that this has actually happened. So not sure what the anomaly was with the phone call at the guest house last time when he didn't know where she lived yet. But yeah, so Cruz heads out to whatever prison William Addison was in and talks to the warden, who right away looks a bit dodgy. And he says, oh yeah, he was let out after only a year because of good behavior. He was a model prisoner, which Cruz scoffs at, but he says, take it up with his parole officer. I really can't do anything, at this point for you. There's another guy hanging out there whose only job seems to be to hold the clipboard where you sign in and out of the prison. And as soon as Cruz leaves, he phones up William Addison and says, you might have some trouble. There's a Mexican cop looking for you. And so William Addison says, well, I'm not going to let him stand in my way. And he sneaks into Cruz's beach house when Cruz is asleep, drunk again, and takes out a little vial and drips some poison into Cruz's glass and into Cruz's tequila bottle. And then when Cruz wakes up, he knocks over his glass, but refills it again from the tequila bottle. And then he turns over a picture of Eden, looks at it, and puts his glass down. So has he maybe decided to stop drinking and the poison will just be sitting there for weeks? Or will he dump it all out so as not to be tempted, and William Addison will have to figure out another way to murder Cruz?
Yeah, so between William Addison and the mystery woman, we have a lot of people sneaking around Cruz's house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. Kelly was visiting him at one point earlier too.
Yeah, we've seen Julie pop in, so it's been a pretty high traffic area.
Keith is attacked from behind by Gina, who's back from her stint up north, I guess. I imagine Robin Madsen had a vacation. And Keith makes some disparaging remarks about her returning to work on her first day at 2 p.m. But she seems to think she's going to slot herself right back in as Keith's secretary. So we'll see what happens there. Then Gina goes to pop over to see her other suitor, Dr. Nicholas, and she wants to have lunch with him right away, but he pushes her off until dinner. She overhears Jeffrey and Alex talking about the fact that they, along with Mason, want to buy another pharmaceutical company as part of their plan to get Cece. Now, Gina is, of course, very intrigued by the little bit that she overhears. So I'm kind of wondering how this plan is supposed to work. They've tricked Cece into buying Acme Pharmaceuticals. They're going to buy a separate one themselves and then license the drug to it or something. So, and I'm not sure how that will destroy Cece. So maybe it's going to be some weird thing where they trick Cece into signing a contract that's wrong and then they'll sue him for breach or something. Like, I'm not sure how it's going to financially destroy him. So that'll be, I'd like to hear more about this plan. But Gina returns to Keith to tell her, we're going to make a fortune, and says that there's some scheme related to, another pharmaceutical company, but Keith says, what's the name of it? And she doesn't know. So he sends her back, and we see her snooping around the lab later on. And then she overhears another conversation between Dr. Nicholas and Jeffrey discussing Pamela and Jeffrey's relationship with Kelly and suspecting Cece of destroying the letter. So Gina's suddenly getting a whole lot of info, and I was wondering when Gina came back if they were going to launch her into a new scheme or they would stick with the maybe the romantic storyline between her and Keith for a while, but it sounds like she's got her finger in one or two potential new schemes already against the Capwells. So that'll be kind of fun. Kelly and Jeffrey end up, getting some models in for the photo shoot for the campaign. I don't know if it's the chosen campaign or if they're just doing trials. But anyway, at one point, Kelly jumps up and grabs a hair clip and shows them how it's done. And Jeffrey says, "I think we found the model that we need for our campaign. It's you." And she says, "I'm not a model." So I feel like this is now going to be a Kelly becomes a model storyline.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's basically it for Kelly. She's wandered around into a couple of people's stories this week. Nothing big this episode. I think that's it for Jeffrey too. So that leaves Carolyn. Oh, there's two actual intersecting stories. Let's talk about Keith and Jane first. Jane wants to interview Keith because she's been assigned it in one of her journalism classes to interview Keith Timmons. He immediately tries to turn it into a potential dating situation with Jane and says, "Oh yeah, let's interview at lunch," and they go to Johnny's. But of course, Brick is there, and Brick, we find out, has engaged Julia to sue Keith and the city of Santa Barbara for his 1 month of false imprisonment. So he's not too happy to see Keith there with his girlfriend, Jane, being interviewed. Pearl doesn't seem to be too happy about it, too, because Pearl, the waiter, ends up shaking an entire bottle of champagne over Keith. And Keith and Brick just have a lot of fun Brick and Pearl have a lot of fun taunting Keith.
Yeah, we see Keith kind of rubbing up against everyone this episode. He has a little fallout with Cruz again. He has this little fallout with Brick and Pearl. And he and Jane are not getting along that well either.
Mm-hmm. Jane had tried to get out of it, but the professor, wouldn't let her. Now, to Gina's chagrin, Dr. Nicholas takes her not to a fancy restaurant, but to Johnny's, where she not only has to deal with low-class food, but has to watch Keith hitting on Jane. And Dr. Nicholas is annoyed that she's not fully paying attention to him because she keeps looking over at Jane and Keith. Not that I don't think Dr. Nicholas really has that much interest in Gina. I think it's just potentially just something to get info on the Capwells or whatever. So I don't think he cares that much. And so Lionel gives Jane the good news that he has been hired to fly down to Guatemala to look at some Mayan jade artifacts. I didn't know they had jade in the Americas.
So this is actually a real thing. I'm a bit of a rock buff, and Guatemalan jade is actually a real thing. It is the same composition as the jade that you get in Burma, but because the soil has slightly different chemicals, it is more of a bluish color. And they found it on all these Mayan artifacts and never knew quite where it came from. They didn't think there were any jade mines left in Central America. And then around the time, probably, I wouldn't be surprised if the writers had read an article or something, that this show was being made. A group of American geologists actually went down and found the lost jade mines.
Wow, I had no idea about that.
Yeah, and so they've actually, and now you can actually buy Guatemalan jade in stores. They actually turned it into a bit of an enterprise. And it's very beautiful jade. It's high quality, a lot of it is anyway, and it's this beautiful sort of bluish green color.
Wow.
I will show you a sample of it on our next podcast.
Well, Lionel tells Jane he would love to take Carolyn down there, and Jane says, "Oh, I'd like to come myself," but Lionel goes to ask Caroline, and at the same time, before he can get it out, Caroline says, I've just been asked by the dean of whatever to fly to New York for a week to do alumni donor soliciting there. And she's very excited to go to New York and meet up with some old friends again. So Lionel doesn't even tell her about the trip to Guatemala. And so he heads off to the airport alone. Jane wonders why Carolyn is not going with Lionel, and somehow, during that conversation, Carolyn finds out from Jane about this trip to Guatemala that Lionel had planned for them. And to surprise Lionel, Carolyn shows up on the plane, which is flying through Guadalajara. So Lionel is very excited to see that that Carolyn has joined him on the trip. So so I think Lionel and Carolyn's romantic storyline is progressing. And I think, we've got the Dr. Nicholas, Jeffrey, Mason revenge against Cece story, which somehow involves the pharmaceutical company and his secret formula, his vaccine to save the world or whatever it does. And Gina now knows something to do with Pamela has happened, so hopefully she'll dig more into that. It'll be interesting. And Kelly and Jeffrey, once again, all romantic with each other. And Kelly going to be a model. And Jane and Brick still dating happily. Pearl just around having hijinks all the time. Keith calls him a pseudo hippie or something at one point. And he goes, I'm just an oyster shucker. So.
And we do see, if I recall, a brief appearance by Ted and Haley, do we not?
Was that today? I don't know. I think they shot it in such a way that Lucy actually was alone the whole episode and then went over to Cruz, but it almost had the vibe that they were there, but I don't think they actually were. So just on Facebook yesterday, I noticed that the actor who plays Pearl, what is it? Robert Thaler? Is that right? Have I got it right? He and Bernard White were commenting back and forth to each other. Bernard White, of course, plays Angel.
Yeah.
So they must remember each other from that time. So I think one of them is in a play right now, or in a show, and the other one commented on it, and there was a reply back. So I just followed them both.
We did not see either of them, I believe, at the reunion, did we?
No. All right, that is it for episode, what did we say it was? 407? 406? 407? No, 706. 706 that aired May 7th, 1987. We'll be back for week 146 of Santa Barbara. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
How did it go this evening?
Well, as will readings go, I give it about a 4.5. It was short and brief, I'll say that.